Good morning and welcome to our webinar to support Apprenticeship Week. My name's Tania Bowers. I'm the Global Public Policy Director at APSCo. APSCo, including APSCo Outsource, is the trade body for the professional staffing industry. We have over 1,000 members across all professional, public and private sectors, including STEM, general professional, accountancy, finance, healthcare, teaching and social work. Access to skills and talent is a key focus for APSCo UK and Outsource this year, with members, policy makers and the broader supply chain. We're very conscious of the skills shortages across all the sectors our members supply permanent and temporary staff into. And we see higher level apprenticeships as a very practical means of addressing our members' skills shortages and a route that's available to them now. However, we're mindful that a lot of smaller employees or smaller employers are put off by the administration and perceived red tape. And in a post-COVID world, many, I'm sure, don't feel that they have the time to fully understand the apprenticeship process and access the scheme. So I joined the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network last year, run by the DfE. So I'm keen to support Apprenticeship Week. And with this in mind, we've organised two webinars. One is for SME employers and how they can access help and assistance. And our webinar today is actually focused at Levy Paying Employers, so our larger members and their clients, and about how you can transfer your unused levy to SME employers as a means of facilitating skilled apprenticeships and supporting your EDI programs as well. So that's me done. I'm delighted to introduce and be joined today by Amy Glanville, who's the Apprenticeships Programme Manager at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and Stephen Ram-Kisson, who's Senior Account Manager at the London Progression Collaboration. So, firstly, I'm going to ask you both to explain a little bit more about what your organisations do and the national network and how you can support levy paying employers. So firstly, I'm going to turn to you, Amy. So yes, please let us know a bit more about you.
Hi everyone, as Tania says, I'm Amy Glanville and I'm Apprenticeships Programme Manager at Greater Manchester Combined Authority. So I look after all of our outward facing apprenticeship programmes, and I have the remit of increasing the quality and quantity of apprenticeships available in Greater Manchester. As part of that, one of the programmes that we have and we fund is a levy matchmaking service. So that brings together small businesses or smaller businesses in Greater Manchester who would like to hire apprentices or offer apprenticeships to existing staff, and large employers who have got apprenticeship levy to spare and to share. So I'm going to be talking a bit today about what levy transfer is and how it might work. But I also have I'm also part of a network of people similar to me across the country, because obviously it's a regional focus for me in Greater Manchester, but there are equivalents across the country. So it's all over the place. It's not just me in Greater Manchester.
So I think you've got some slides that you're just going to use to explain.
Yep, absolutely.
A little bit more.
Just share my screen if I can make it work. So I wanted to start by talking about what is levy transfer and what is the apprenticeship levy, in case that's a new concept to anyone on the call. So the apprenticeship levy was introduced in 2017 by the government. It means that large employers, so anyone with a pay bill of over £3 million a year, pays a certain percentage of that pay bill into the apprenticeship levy. That pot of money is ring fenced for you to spend on your own apprentices, to spend on their training. And if you don't spend it on that apprenticeship training within 2 years from when you started putting it in there, then it goes back to central government. That's how it was, that's how it used to be. But in April 2019, a levy sharing function was introduced, and it meant that employers could transfer some of their unused levy to another organisation to pay for their apprenticeship training. At the moment, the limit is 25% of their levy, and that's 25% of your total, not just 25% of your unspent levy. Levy funding that you choose to share covers apprenticeship training only. So it's not the salary or the on costs of the apprentice, it's just the training that they're receiving from a third party. And it's paid out in monthly instalments directly from your levy pot in the what's called the digital apprenticeship service, straight to the training provider. So it doesn't actually go to the other organisation, the other employer, it goes straight from you to the training provider. And there is no relationship required beyond that funding. It can purely be that you're financing the training, but many organisations do choose to get quite involved with their SME apprentices and the organisations that they're sharing with. It's totally up to you, but it can be a really nice thing to do for some organisations. They really enjoy getting involved. So we wanted to talk a little bit about how levy sharing can support your ESG goals, social value. It's really up to you as a levy donor to decide who you might want to share your funds with. You can make your choice based on your goals as an organisation. So you might consider sharing with your local area, building links with other businesses in your local economy. You might choose to share just with your industry. So maybe creating skills for the future, developing a talent pool. Maybe you can't take on an apprentice at the moment, but you know that there's a skill shortage. And so if someone else were to take on an apprentice and train them up, it's better for the whole industry in the long run. You might choose specifically to share with some sectors. So some large employers choose to share with things like the emergency services, share with charities, or even a sector like childcare. If, for example, one of your goals is to support working parents, if you share with a childcare company, you're creating more capacity in the childcare sector, which can support your goals to support working parents in your organisation. You might choose to share with organisations that you already know with your supply chain, where you can see that you've already got a relationship with them. Or you might choose to put some other sort of conditions on it. For example, things like I only want to share with an employer that's going to pay that apprentice a living wage, or an organisation that's got really clear environmental strategy in place. But it's entirely up to you. So if you want, you can share with any legitimate business. All apprenticeships are good, in my opinion. It's what I do all day. And the more apprenticeships, the merrier. So it's really good, even if you're not targeting in one specific area, to create more jobs for especially young people and those at the very start of their career, can really support your ESG goals too. I wanted to give you a couple of examples of what that might look like. So, for example, in Greater Manchester, there are quite a lot of large levy donors who like to share their funding with our fire service to support apprentice firefighters. At last count, I think there had been around 130 apprentice firefighters that had been funded through levy sharing. So that's a fantastic capacity building in our area, and it's quite a popular one. Aldermore Bank, which you may have heard of, they support apprenticeships at two particular organisations. So Right Directions, which is a company that offers support and pastoral care for young people, and Acorns Children's Hospice. So they've chosen specifically to support healthcare, childcare, pastoral support apprenticeships. And Lloyds Banking Group is a really big sharer of their levy. They love it. They transfer around £3 million per year to SMEs, supporting over 300 businesses and 600 apprentices. And they're an organisation that really loves to get involved with their SME apprentices. They even have an SME Apprentice of the Year category in their staff awards. So they really see them as being part of the apprenticeship family at Lloyds Banking Group. And you might be thinking, that sounds fantastic, but how do I do it? What do I do? What support is there for me? So there are lots of regional services that support the matching process. We have one in Greater Manchester, our Levy matchmaking service. There's one in London, which Stephen's obviously going to talk to you in more detail about, but there are others. There's one in Essex, there's one that covers the west of England, and there's many more as well. The Co-op runs one, which is nationwide. And even if it's not branded, your local enterprise partnership in your local area might have a system or some sort of service that they provide. And there is also a national system which is integrated with the digital apprenticeship service. So it's got some quite cool functionality, but some of the sort of interpersonal hand-holding support isn't there with the national system in the same way. So that's some of the options that you have. And I'm going to pass over now to Stephen, who's going to tell you in a bit more detail about one specific matching service, which is from the London Progression Collaboration.
Thank you, Amy. Stephen, over to you. I think we're just waiting for a few slides from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Hello, everybody. So as Tania said, my name is Stephen Ramkishan. I'm from the London Progression Collaboration. I'm just going to focus primarily from the support we give to large paying employers, but also we provide that end-to-end service to SMEs who are looking for the funding. We are a startup. We were established just over 2 years ago in 2019, and we are supported by JP Morgan. We are incubated by the IPPR, the Institute of Public Policy Research, and we are supported by the Mayor of London's office in terms of our activities. The next slide, please. We have our aim is basically to help more than 1,000 Londoners move into sustainable jobs, better paid jobs, high paying jobs and skills. And by doing that, we support employers in terms of creating new apprenticeship opportunities, either for new staff or existing staff, but also build the capacity in that sector and making it more sustainable that enables increased productivity for London across the sector. We're focusing on 6 key sectors: hospitality, construction, build environment, retail, digital care, digital tech, early years care, and health and social care. And our aim is to enable people to move into those better jobs in terms of social mobility. I've put a link there that you can find out more about our campaign, Reskilling and Recovery, which we're running in tandem with the Mayor in terms of our support, in terms of our activities. Next slide, please. So just here is a quick impact of what we've done in that last period of time. In terms of, we've created over 700 apprenticeship new starts. Over 50% of those are young people under the age of 24 from underrepresented groups. And we have managed to leverage over £9 million in terms of supporting small businesses. And that's gone on to support over 170 SMEs across London in those key sectors we've highlighted and cited in terms of good practice. So next slide, please. So how do we support employers? As Amy illustrated in her slides, we understand what is it they're looking for and go through what their goals and priorities are. We come to an agreement with them, a pledge agreement, which is an overarching document in which indicates what we will do in that period of time. We will support them in how to set up their DAS account, they're not familiar with that, but more importantly, presenting them with information about a levy request that's come from an SME or via a training provider that we are working with. The information will be matched against their priorities in terms of support, but more importantly, they will give them insight about the organisation, why they're taking on the apprentice, the progression route, and details in terms of EDI data, as well as information about their DAS account. Each employer can evaluate on a case by case and decide which of those requests they want to support, and then informs us of which of those outcomes are, and then we go accordingly. Our aim is to, obviously, we enable them to make the connection request to the SME that goes into their digital apprenticeship service account. Once accepted, then other intermediaries, which is the provider, they will make sure that the standards are correct, add the details of the learners with the apprentices, and that comes back to the employer for final sign-off, and then it's approved. And then after that process, the money is drawn down over the profile of that program. So it's not, so if I use the example of business admin, level 3, and it's about £6,000, it's not the case of £6,000 at once, it's profiled over a period of 24 months, and that's drawn down from the SME to the provider to pay towards their training. And we keep tabs on the progress. We update our Levy employers in terms of activities by mid-year reports, which gives them a snapshot of activities, but also ask them about the impact of that intervention, what it's done for the business, and also for the apprentice in terms of their progression and going beyond the apprenticeship opportunity. So yes, that's a snapshot about our services. Next slide, please. And there's my contact details and more, which give you an overview of our services. Just to add, although we're focusing on those 6 sectors, we will look at all apprenticeship opportunities, as Amy said, legitimate businesses. We'll spend more time with the organisation, understanding what their requirements are and needs, and we would work very closely with our donors in terms of their matches and also their corporate goals. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Amy. One question, actually, Amy, from your slide deck. You mentioned that the SMEs cannot use the transfer to fund the salary of the individual. I know that the London Progression Collaboration expects the employer to pay national living wage, I think. How can they get help from the government for that salary aspect? Is that part? I mean, sorry, Stephen, you might be better placed to answer that.
Amy, you want to go answer them? I'll
go first. So at the moment, so there is an apprenticeship minimum wage, which at the moment is £4.30
quite low,
per
isn't
hour.
It?
Yeah, in my opinion, yes, quite low. So that's the minimum that you can pay an apprentice. You obviously can pay them more, and I always encourage employers to pay more, both because it's, in my opinion, the right thing to do, and also because it attracts a much bigger and potentially better pool of candidates to any vacancy. So as we speak, as we're recording this, there are currently some government incentives which would go to anyone taking on an apprentice brand new, which go up to about £4,500 per new apprentice. Those are due to stop at the end of January. So unfortunately, by the time this goes out, they may well have stopped. We do sometimes get a last minute reprieve, but at the moment, not so. However, many local authorities have incentive programs of their own. So we have run them in the past. Some of our individual local authorities run them at the moment. So it is worth looking around and seeing if there are any additional incentives for the SME that's taking on the apprentice to cover that salary. Because, as we say, the levy is fantastic, but it just covers the training costs, not the salary.
Yes. Stephen, do you do anything specifically in London to help the smaller employer?
Yes. We actively work towards the London living wage or the national minimum wage. We don't tend to advocate or promote the apprenticeship minimum wage, as we feel that's unsustainable. And also we would encourage our employers, our SME employers, to look towards the national minimum wage or London living wage. And London living wage is just over £11 an hour. And that applies to all individuals of age groups as such. Many of our donors are supporters of London living wage, so we would work with those SMEs who are moving towards that. We're also looking at what other certain benefits they can provide. It may well, they may provide equipment, support with travel, in terms of pension contribution or other activities as such. Also to highlight the fact that if the individual is under 24, there's no national insurance contribution. So there's a national insurance holiday, so to speak. If the individual is between 16 to 18, there is the apprenticeship uplift of £1,000. But obviously, as Amy said, the government incentive expires end of this month, whether or not they extend or such. But it's there. We do draw that to the attention of the employer. Likewise, in London, there will be local authorities who will have their own incentive mechanisms to engage their local employers. And
yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So one of the areas, Stephen, you say you cover in London is digital and tech. One of the reasons I looked at this was thinking about how our members could help clients, build up their higher skilled apprenticeships and develop skills internally, at the higher levels. And many of our members recruit into digital and tech. Can you, I believe you do have some more, can you give any more information about popular apprenticeships in this area that you're putting through your collaboration?
Yes, so digital tech is a very popular sector, and there's a number of job roles from level 3 to level 4. In terms of level 3, you're looking at anything from a digital support technician or a junior content manager, data technician, or a digital marketeer. And the fundings for that range from anything between £13,000 up to £12,000 to £15,000, depending on the job role and the circumstances of the role. Equally, we also support level 4 apprenticeships as well. And these are associate project managers, business analysts, digital community managers, and also information system business analysts. And again, the funding bands range from anything between £18,000 down to around £12,000. So we would work with the SME, understand what the standard is, because in most cases, choosing the right standard which is fit for the purpose of the business, and it's going to help the business. So spending a little bit more time making sure that the standard is appropriate, and also finding that that fits with finding the right provider as well. So we also provide a guide to here's a list of providers who offer this provision, and we will arrange an introduction call and support the SME in terms of finding that provider. Once that's in place, we then move it forward. So from that levy donor contribution from our large corporates, I would say just over £3 million per annum goes towards supporting the digital tech that goes to SMEs across London.
Wow.
So it's created
really
over
impressive.
It's created over 238 new apprenticeships over the last 2 years.
Yeah, in that sector. That's great. And Amy, I know you're keen to also stress that these apprenticeships can be used to develop clients' own, the skills of their current workforce. It's not always about finding new staff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes when we hear apprenticeships, we think, traditionally we thought plumber and hairdresser, but often we think young people or brand new member of staff. And while all of those apprenticeships are fantastic, that's not to knock them at all, it's really important to be aware that you can use apprenticeships for existing staff too. So if you've got a training need, for example, someone who's experienced but becoming a manager, maybe, you can use the apprenticeship levy, or an SME or a large corporate, you can use your own apprenticeship levy to train your own staff. So you might put someone on a team leader apprenticeship, or if you've identified someone who could be a future leader, you might put them on something like a level 6 chartered manager degree apprenticeship, and that can be a really fantastic opportunity to develop a member of staff that you see the potential in, and they just need some training to really push them on. So it's something that we see across all levy sharing as well, is that we see there are lots of pockets of popular apprenticeships. Digital is really popular, but it's often the sort of ones that fall into the business and administration category that are the most popular, because we see them across all sorts of different organisations. It's your entry-level business admin roles, but also management training and development opportunities for existing staff too.
Yeah, no, great. And I know we're coming to the end of our time today, but one just last question. I think what I'm quite excited about with this is that a savvy levy paying employer can align this quite closely with their ED&I strategy or their ESG strategies. Stephen, or both of you, Stephen first, do you have any tips for employers on how to sort of maximise that sort of crossover benefits, so to maximise the benefit, I guess, that the levy paying employer gets out of putting the time and effort in as well?
Yes, indeed so. I mean, and embracing both the kind of inclusion, the inclusivity of both their workforce and new recruits. So we go to great lengths to kind of emphasize that, both in terms of working with our SMEs, but also with our donors. And that can be translated back in terms of impact in the community, in terms of those other areas and priorities like support of their supply chain or their sector, and where we can encourage and see diversity. So we report back on those EDI impacts and also age groups. So we give that information back to our supporters, but also back to our donors, so they can see that information and what's happening. And more importantly, we would advise them of when looking at recruitment campaigns, making sure that the language is appropriate and inclusive. And similarly with SMEs, sometimes they don't have that support, they don't have the resources. So sitting time with them and their training provider to find the right individual for them and existing workforce.
Thanks, Stephen. And finally, Amy, ESG policies are coming now to the fore, and often there are ways that aren't that obvious that you can support apprenticeships in that area. Can you give an example in Manchester of what some large employers are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things we see in ESG and social value is trying to make sure that our environmental goals are being met. And often we sort of think, oh, environment, sustainability, it's these big ticket items, these big ticket roles of things like a sustainability coordinator that we think, yes, that's the role that we should be supporting. But actually, depending on the region, you can get a bit more creative with thinking about what apprenticeships or what roles, what skills are actually going to support my goal to protect the environment. So for example, in Greater Manchester, one of the things we do a lot is, it's a very urban area. There's a lot of land and not a lot of free land. So unlike a really rural area, we don't have big tracts of land that we could be building wind farms on, for example. What we do have is a huge number of houses. We have a lot of housing, and some of it's quite old. So one of the things that we can do to have the biggest impact is to insulate all of those houses. And to insulate all of those houses, the apprentices that we need are actually construction apprentices. So if you're thinking about trying to support environmental goals, think about what it really means for you as an organisation and for your local area where you can have a big impact. It's not always the most obvious, but the matchmaking services that there are will always be really happy to support you with that and help you sort of think outside the box and work out where you're going to have the most impact.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Well, you've certainly enthused me, and I hope a lot of our members and their clients might feel very positive about approaching your organisations or others around the country to make more of their levy funds. So thank you, Amy. Thank you, Stephen, for your contributions today. Just to let members know, there is a comms pack on the website with information about both Amy and Stephen's organisations and other organisations around the country. And there's also information put together in such a way that you can forward this on and make it available to your clients as well. So thank you for your attention today. Thank you again, Amy, Stephen, and goodbye, everybody. Thank you.